Good afternoon and welcome to Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM, New Haven's home for community radio. Happy Tuesday, everyone. We have the charterizer in the house, the man who knows about charts and charters, Stephen Mednick, local attorney and musician. The one-stop shop for towns and cities in Connecticut who want to update their charters every 10 years usually. Those are their constitutions. New Haven just did it with his help. He's done 27 and counting. And Steve puts out more new albums. He's so prolific than even Taylor Swift, if you don't count the albums that Taylor Swift reissues every 6 months from her old catalog, which I admire her for that. I'm not into her music, but I admire that she's taking her music back from the record companies that tried to exploit
something
her.
the Beatles never did.
Yeah. They were too stoned to think about the business, right? Yeah. Anyway, Steve Mednick, attorney, Politico, singer, songwriter, recording artist. Welcome back to Dateline New Haven. It is always so much fun to have you on, Steve.
It's always fun to be here.
Okay.
Is this our first since the pandemic? Or
No.
I think
You've
I've
had 7 albums since the pandemic. We usually try to get you on for every album.
Yeah, there you go.
So he's a political songwriter and folk rock. And Steve, I'm going to ask you to get close to the mic. You've been in the news because we just had another election year where 3 more cities put proposed changes to their charters before the voters in a referendum. 2 passed, 1 didn't. And you advised them all 3.
All 3.
And so you can't tell us what you really think about the wisdom of what they did, right? Because they're your clients, right?
Yeah.
But you can explain to us the process.
I can explain the process, and I could talk about the substance of what they did.
And then I can opinionate.
And you can opinionate, and
I won't lose you.
I can repudiate.
Okay, but you can't, because that wouldn't be totally honest, because you can't really tell me what happened.
Yeah, I want to be careful, about what I say, because I don't have a vote. I recommend things to people. I have a point of reference.
You're John Roberts. You call balls and strikes, right?
Oh, John Roberts. John Roberts ain't calling balls and strikes.
Although
let's not go to that subject.
Okay, so Steve Mednick, why do we care about city charters? Why should the person listening to this show or going to the polls on election day or not going to polls, why should they care what's in their city charter?
Yeah. Well, a city charter is supposed to be the constitution of the local government. And so a citizen should be able to take a look at the city charter and understand what the role of the mayor is, what the mayor's responsibilities are, what the role of the Board of Alders in New Haven, City Council, Legislative Council in Hamden, City Common Council in Hartford and Norwalk, and understand what the legislative functions are, how boards and commissions operate, how department heads operate, what their real powers are. If they want to be on a board or commission, it should be the way that they find out what the boards and commissions do.
Are all boards and commissions needing to be in the charter?
No, that's one of the big things we can talk about that cities are doing that I've been advising.
I guess because the 2 things I'm always confused. So it matters because it matters how our government is structured, because it says who has power and how they can use it. And if you want to exert power, you have to look at what the rules are.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I'm not the brightest bulb in the back. When I look at charters, including New Haven's, I can't figure out what the heck it's saying half the time. I need to call Steve Mednick and say, does this mean you're allowed to hit someone over the head or serve 4 years or get $10,000 or what's it saying?
We've been trying in New Haven. This is my second charter as counsel. I did worked on charters
10 years ago, I remember.
A little bit, 10 years ago, but I worked on charters when I was an alder many, many years ago. But New Haven has been moving in the direction, and I think I give Taisha Walker-Myers a lot of credit.
She's the head of the Board of Alders.
Head of the Board of Alders, and a lot of credit for, and Michael Smart, who's chaired the last 2 charter revisions, city clerk. A lot of credit for the direction we're taking. In New Haven, we're moving in the direction of even further constitutionalizing the charter, just laying out the structure of the government and trying to move out.
Why are the payment of alders in there? Like at the Congress.
There's a reason. There's a good reason.
Congress, they vote on their own pay.
Let me finish my point, then I'll answer your question. The point I was making is that we're trying to move things out of the charter that can be dealt with more readily by ordinance. And so,
like how would you get a lifetime appointment to the Parks
Exactly.
Commission? Yeah.
So all boards and commissions don't need to be fully structured in the charter unless you don't want anybody doing damage to them. Like, I'll give you an example. Ethics. civil service. Those things should be in the charter because you don't want a mayor coming in or a board of alders coming in or a city council coming in and getting rid of the ethics board.
I get that,
or the civil service
but
board.
I do know that civil service sometimes responds to real life conditions about labor markets, how government, what kind of work government doesn't do. Are you tying the hands? By
No,
having
the civil
it embedded
service, the civil service code should be in the ordinances,
Okay.
not in the charter. But in that case, the structure of the entity, you want to make sure. Waterbury, we created an oversight, an internal audit commission to deal with their financial problems. That's been in there for 20 years. Waterbury's been in pretty good shape for the last 20 years. We created this entity. You don't want the mayor to be able to get rid of it, and you don't want the mayor and the board of alders to reduce the budget. So we had a provision in the Waterbury charter that said you can never go below what the budget is the year before, because you can't undermine the audit group.
That's
that
interesting.
Does internal
So
audit.
New Haven is something interesting. So every 10 years, you have to have a commission that looks about whether you want to put a question before the voters. You could do it more often, but they never do. So what was interesting, the last two times, this year, this past November, and then 10 years ago, we did pass charter changes. They put together changes, and the voters passed them. Before that, I don't remember it ever passing. It seems like it was always ill-fated. In the
Well, that's
past.
because I didn't advise them.
Okay.
That's why. No, I think the people are.
I think it's because Unite Here cared about this. They have the majority of the Board of Alders. They also have the majority on town committees, and people don't pay a lot of attention to local elections. So
But
if
it's
you
just
have
not
one
New
group
Haven.
out there getting people to vote.
I've seen trends throughout the state. I mean,
Okay.
and I think that issues that were enormously controversial 20 years ago, 4-year term for mayor, 4-year term for legislative bodies, are becoming less controversial.
So New Haven just passed something
They just passed it.
that had been
Yeah.
attempted for decades, which is to have a 4-year term for mayor instead of 2, 4-year term for alders, and not staggered. So we're going to have fewer elections, so we're going to have less democracy and oversight and accountability. And we also cleaned up some of the language in the charter, and we
the compensation issue. You
yeah,
want
we
to talk
raised
about
the
that?
pay, which I was really glad they got a raise, but I couldn't figure out why that has to be in the
Here's
charter.
why. There's a real reason. It's not has nothing to do with protecting alders or city council members. We have these provisions in Hartford. I now recommend them here. In the state of Connecticut, the legislative bodies can raise their compensation. There's no prohibition against compensation. You don't need to have a charter provision that says you're entitled to get paid. Here's the problem. The state constitution, there's a provision that, state statutes have a provision that requires any increases in legislative compensation to go to referendum. So if the mayor was to propose raising the alders' compensation from the 1989 level, that's when I was on the board of alders. The amount that was currently that is currently set
2000.
was established in 1989. 1989.
That was almost some real money back then.
I didn't think it was that much then, but it was
Yeah.
it was still something, and was more than it is today. And so you need to go to referendum. So if the mayor wanted to raise it by $50 a year, it would have to go to referendum, even if it's in the budget and the budget passes. I don't know why that legislation exists, but it does. And so a number of years ago in Hartford, 20 years ago, when we were establishing compensation for the mayor to make sure that mayors got gradual increases, and the state constitution governs that as well. We don't need to go into that arcana, but there's some restrictions under the state constitution. I said, why don't we do something about city council? And what we did is we established a baseline for the city council with a COLA. And you can
COLA
only
means cost of living
adjustment.
And I'm really glad you did that, because that's the problem. We last did 89, but there isn't any keeping up with inflation.
Exactly. And so the voters get to vote on the constitutional standard, and that, I believe, satisfies the referendum requirement. And so that when the increase
Because it was
goes...
a referendum.
The
The
referendum
charter vision is a referendum.
is a referendum. So by
So they did
establishing it by referendum, and the voters have determined that there should be these increases, and the Constitution limits the increase in a 4-year term to only twice, once before the term starts and once before the third year starts. So you can't get a COLA increase every year. It only comes just before your term starts and just before the
that's
third year
interesting.
of the state
And
constitution.
Tom Breen is asking, did the Charter Vision Commission ever figure out why we have 3 lifetime Parks Commission members? What's the history of that?
We tried to figure it out. We didn't. My guess is, I mean, I didn't go back and look at all the initial gifting that was done, but we're assuming that there was a gift from some private land entity, and they wanted to guarantee that people be represented to protect the land that was
So we
given to the
didn't we
city.
didn't in this referendum get rid of that incredibly out of date provision. We said that the Board of Alders can decide that question, and the majority of the Board of Alders said we're not going to stop the one person who. The three people there now are there until they're 945 years old or older, but that we will move forward, get rid of that.
No, that was what the initial position was. The alders haven't made a final judgment. We're now doing a project, an ordinance project to replace all the boards and commissions. So the board, the park board, is one of the boards that will be reorganized, and they kind of did make a decision. Now that I'm thinking about it, there is a term requirement, so that when we create a new parks commission or a replacement entity, you are subject to a term of office, not to a lifetime appointment.
And
so
then,
those positions will go away.
Does that have to go back to the charter? Oh, I guess not. We're saying you can decide.
It's going to the ordinances.
How many boards commissions are going to be reconstituted?
5 or 6. I can't
Like
think
which ones and why?
The ones that are most likely to be the Financial Review and Audit Commission, Board of Fire Commissioners, Public Health, Civilian Review, Police Commissioners, Park Commission, and Library. Those are all.
And why are we rethinking those? What are we rethinking?
We're simply saying
office?
that they should be moved to the Code of Ordinances. So we're taking them out. We may leave their structures exactly as they are.
Are there any concerns about the police commission? Are they going to retain their subpoena power?
They don't have subpoena power.
They remember the wiretap hearings when they subpoenaed everybody?
It's unclear how they subpoena those things.
That's because Daniel Greer was the chair.
Yeah, and
so they don't have
and their
subpoena
counsel.
power.
They may have used the subpoena authority that a lawyer has to issue subpoenas.
Oh, the way that the Board of Alders can give
Exactly.
subpoena power to somebody.
Yeah.
So they don't have subpoena power. I was wrong about that.
The body that does have subpoena power is the Civilian Review Board by state statute. So all those are going to be moved to the Code of Ordinances. Whether they're changed, whether their composition is changed, will be up to the alders.
So we're learning about charter vision from the charter vision expert at Connecticut, Steve Mednick, an attorney who has advised 27 and counting municipalities on proposals. So this year you had 3. You had New Haven, Norwalk, and Stamford. So in Norwalk it passed as well. What major changes did they make?
Well, Norwalk was an astounding project. Norwalk took a charter that was written in 1913. It's been subject to modifications over the years, but the charter there, like my old New Britain charter, that was the first big charter I did in 1995, was organized alphabetically. So try being a citizen in a community that has a charter that is organized alphabetically. I know the mayor and I were talking, Mayor Rilling, who's a terrific guy, former police chief in Norwalk, said to me that when he became mayor, he was trying to figure out what his functions were with respect to the budget. He had to go to 5 different chapters.
So is the idea you just rewrote it to be intelligible, or did they change anything about the way government works?
We made I advised, and they followed my advice, to restructure their charter so that it is readable.
So the whole idea was readability.
Readability,
so that passed
accessibility to
88%,
public.
88%
of the vote. I've never had.
And then how much? New Haven got 64%?
Roughly mid-60s, yeah.
And then Stamford voted it down. There was a fight between the mayor and the Board of Representatives, which is their council.
Board of Representatives, their Board of Alders, yeah.
Yeah, and they had a fight, even though the same party, about who gets to serve on different boards of commissions. That kind of seemed that it went from a NIMBY thing, right? The mayor wanted to make it easier to build housing, and the Board of Representatives were at least quoted saying that she was making it not listen to neighborhoods enough that wanted to keep out affordable housing from Stamford, although they didn't characterize it that way, and they wanted to have more control of the zoning board. Is that not what it was?
Not entirely.
Don't be diplomatic. What was
no?
Really
I won't.
about?
I don't need to be diplomatic. I mean, the Board of Representatives was looking at development in Stamford. There's been a lot of development in Stamford, and an argument was made. Right? An argument was made that the housing that is being developed in Stamford is moderate and low income housing. The median price of housing that qualifies for low and moderate income is probably much higher than it is in New Haven, for example. So the concept that they were fighting for low and median, low and middle income housing. I thought they were fighting
against it. I thought they thought the mayor wasn't letting NIMBYs from Stamford neighborhoods keep out poorer people.
The mayor argued that the Board of Reps was trying to keep out poor people, middle class.
Yeah.
That was her argument. I'm not sure that argument.
Who were you working for?
I worked for the Charter Commission that was proposing those
And
changes.
what was it they're going to change?
They were going to change 2 things. One was they were changing the petition requirements. Right now, if you own a condominium in Stamford, the special act that was created in 1953 allows the condo association to have one signature on a petition. We were trying
For
to
what?
a petition for a zoning change, a petition to appeal a zoning decision. They have a very different zoning system. In Stamford, if you want to appeal a zoning ruling or a planning ruling, you can appeal it to the functional equivalent of the Board of Alders. They serve as an appeals body. Right now, in order to appeal that, you need to fill out petitions, individual property owners. If you live in a neighborhood with a lot of condominiums, individual members of condos are not considered property owners.
I see.
And so we were trying to modernize the process, very simple, modernize the process to permit unit owners to be able to sign petitions.
And that wasn't it, though. It wasn't also something about the way boards and commissions are structured?
We'll get to that in a minute. But that was the first thing. That was ultimately taken out of the hands of the Charter Commission because the mayor put into the legislation that would ban us from changing the provisions of the charter pertaining to petitions and pertaining to sales of land, acquisition of land, whole range of things. That happened back in the end of June. The second thing that was a big issue in Stamford, and it's an issue in a lot of other places, but particularly difficult in Stamford, is Stamford has a huge number of holdover board and commission members. And what I mean by that is
when the terms
when
are
you
out,
serve
you
out
continue sitting on it.
Yeah, your term is a 4-year term,
and
you sit until your successor.
And the mayor nominates someone. If the board turns it down, they can continue sitting
They
there,
can
which
continue
is
to
sort
sit
of
there.
what Justin Elliker wanted to be able to do in New Haven when his police chief. He's saying I should just be able to keep her there forever. Sounds like you could do that in Stamford.
In Stamford, you could do that on boards and commissions, and the reason you could do it on a board and commission, Stamford has a practice. Their corporation counsel's office, and I think their corporation counsel is an outstanding guy. He was corp counsel when I was corp counsel in the 90s, and I think Tom Casone is a really remarkable guy, and he did not issue this opinion. A prior corporation counsel issued an opinion. In Stamford, you stay on a board or commission until a successor is appointed and approved, or...
Oh, that's different from an appointee to a department head. Okay.
Or 6 months, whichever is earlier. So they actually have in their charter right now, as we sit here today, they have a provision in the charter that says you're off after 6 months. However, the Corporation Council, some time ago, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, opined that, maybe it was more recent, it might have been more recent, opined that the 6-month provision, as a matter of what Charlie Album in New Haven would have called practical wisdom.
He was the late corporation counsel in the 1980s.
One of my predecessors. But he had the theory of practical wisdom. If you couldn't find the law, you had to apply practical wisdom. They made a decision that the provision on 6 months is not valid because if you applied it, you would end up having boards and commissions without members because the mayor may not appoint and the Board of Reps may not approve. And from my perspective, from a legal perspective, I think that's fallacious. And that's still there in their charter, so they may fight that battle again. But in order to get around that, they were trying to come up with a provision that forced the mayor to appoint the holdovers and actually promote replacements for the holdovers. And
meaning if they were turned down, pick someone else. I thought they were also going to give the power to themselves to suggest people.
The way it worked is this. The way it works now in Stamford is that the mayor has 120 days to nominate somebody for a board and commission position. If she does it, and it's rejected, she's satisfied the charter, which means there's no trigger that would force her or him to appoint somebody else.
So they can leave it vacant.
And it can leave it vacant and it goes nowhere else. If the mayor defaults on the 120-day provision, it goes to the president of the Board of Representatives.
And if that president defaults, it goes to the full board.
If the president defaults under the current charter, and it is the current charter, it's remaining the charter, it goes back to the mayor for another 90 days.
All this fighting about who gets to pick whom to a board if someone doesn't meet a deadline?
What?
All this fighting is about who gets to pick whom, who gets to pick members of boards and commissions if you don't meet a deadline?
What the Charter Commission and the Board of Reps is trying to do is trying to force a situation where the mayor could not withhold appointment and extend terms. And so what they did, their replacement provision was the mayor gets 120 days, period. Not a matter of default. If If the mayor does not get an appointment approved within that 120 days, it moves over to the next level, which is the mayor and the Board of Reps president get 120 days to both make nominations. Whoever gets a majority gets the person on the board or commission. If they don't do it with 120 days, the final step is until it's finally approved, the mayor and every member of the Board of Reps gets to make the nomination.
So this didn't pass?
Did not pass.
How come?
According to the official finance reports that were filed at the end of October, the developers who funded the anti-charter effort outspent the pro-charter effort $100,000 to $38,000.
So this will have an impact on how Stamford is built, how much affordable housing there is, and why.
Yeah, but let me finish the point. The point is, when you look at the next finance report, I guarantee it'll be more than 100,000. They put out 9 citywide mailers. In Norwalk, where we didn't put out one, we didn't put it out because it was going to cost $15,000 for one in Norwalk. They did 9 in Stamford.
Is that because they want the ability not to be checked on what they can build? They want to make as much money as possible.
Yeah, they like the system the way it is, and we have a separate zoning board and a separate planning board. And
well, Attorney Steve Mednick is all over charters, the minutiae, the big picture. Yeah. He also puts out at least 1 CD a year, don't you, of original music that you've written and recorded.
I don't know if it's political.
And it's very political.
Yeah, some of
usually.
It is. Some of
well,
it
you
is.
have a series called Problems in Democracy, and you have the 6th CD in that series called On the Brink. When does this come out?
That came out about 5 months ago. I haven't.
5 months ago.
6 months ago. I haven't.
Well, let's hear a song from it, Steve.
Yeah.
Here
Dust
on
blows around
Dateline
us.
Haven.
Yeah.
We're going to hear a song called
The Dust Blows Around Us.
Ooh, The Dust Blows Around Us here. Steve Mednick's latest here on WNHH-FM.
From anywhere, on the road to nowhere, I'm lost in time, forgotten and alone. I can't see the horizon, the miles before me are too far away and may never be known. This town has faded and the dust blows around us. The whispers in the night never dull the pain of the fading chances, the hope for romancing that will never embrace or never be seen. She told me a tale from the Borderlands region, where a legion of souls was lost and last seen. She gave me a book from the house of my mother. The pages turned to powder that I could not read. My past out behind me, my thirst unabated. Even the darkest night could never ease my pain. It was a crazy dark nightmare. It was only 2:30. The moon, it was hiding, never to be seen. There was a reckoning behind that door. It's waiting for me to be sure. How do I reconcile what they did instead? I am living or they all dead. I'm lost in my memories. The fog is descending as the time drifts away. Eternity seems to endure. No longer can I follow the old dirt highway as it meanders in the forest. I'm on my own. It's been too many years, I think you would agree. The truth eludes me just when I need to see. But dust blows around us, scattering like a secret, scattered in the wind, made time to walk away. The traumas and madness of history, it is so madman he swallowed them whole. I'm glad to say they'll never grow.
The dust blows around us. Steve Mednick's latest album, On the Brink, Problems in Democracy, Part 6. What number CD is this for you?
21.
21st album.
Yeah, I'm just about done. We're tonight actually finishing number 22.
And Steve Mednick has worked on 27 and counting city charters in Connecticut, 21 and counting albums. Busy guy on charts and chartering.
I do my best.
Steve,
do my
Patricia
best.
Kane, thanks for listening. Patricia writes, I must be a policy wonk because I find Steve fascinating. I agree.
Oh, wow.
I feel the way too. Thanks for updating us on changes needed and not happening, and sign him up for Cafe 9. You've played Cafe 9.
I have played Cafe 9.
That's a great place.
I love it.
In your early day in the '60s, you played at Folk City in New Haven. New York Greenwich Village on open
No,
mic, right?
no,
You
no.
told me you used to go down to Folk City
Not
open
me.
mic night.
Not me. I wish. No.
Oh, I thought.
no.
Okay, it's a bad memory. I used to do that in high school. Anyone can get up
Not
and
me.
play.
Not me.
So anyway, tell me about this album. You know, it's not
Yeah.
as specific as some of your political music. It's got that you got a new person working with from a younger generation to do your production and arrangement. Isaac Civitello.
Isaac Civitello is just
replacing
amazing.
Eddie Seville, who is more of a boomer like you, right?
Well, Eddie is his father.
Oh,
yeah.
oh.
I'm keeping in the family. About 4 or 5 years ago, Eddie said to me, "Would you mind if I bow out and have Isaac take over?" And of course, I was a little concerned that Eddie didn't like me anymore, and that he was moving on. And Eddie, I think, was just moving on to write his own stuff, to just spend more time writing his own music. He does show.
It's still got the Tom Petty feel.
Who's that?
This album. I mean, like
Yeah.
when there's that song, those leads are complete in the instrumentation.
Well, I think it's more Robert Earl Keen than Tom Petty.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear
that's
that.
a Robert.
But
that's
the guitar leads are very much the.
Well, that's Carl Allwire. Carl's been with me. One of Eddie's guys, one of Eddie's bandmates in the Bandoleros. Frank.
What's
Grillo
the
and
song
Bandoleros.
about? The dust blows around us.
It's about kind of the enemy. I mean, the album notes, the liner notes on the album talk about we've just gotten through this election. This is really done. Wasn't done before the election. Was done
2022.
The 22 election, and so we survived. We made it through. But I thought that we need to keep our eyes on the mark. We need to make sure that democracy survives. And I think that just the statements of the last few days that the former president has made just makes it absolutely clear. And this is about enemy. This is about a character who's just kind of like ambling through life. It may be somebody who could have ended up at the 1/6 insurrection. It could have been somebody who just found their way out of it. And they're finding their ways in very shadowy communities and neighborhoods and places where people live and have lost a sense of purpose. And I think the album is about trying to find that sense of purpose. The public policy guy in me says we need civics education in this country. We need to.
And is that part of what you're doing when you make this music and make it political? Is this more like the musician who just needs an outlet to create, or do you have a mission, a political mission with your music?
Well, the Problems in Democracy series is taken from a course that Muriel Scholar, my 12th grade civics teacher, taught called Problems in Democracy.
In Waterbury?
In Newington, Connecticut. I lived in the greater Hartford area my last 2 years of high school. And Mrs. Scholar really was a true believer in civics education. Problems in Democracy was the advanced course in civics. I've always been interested in the subject and later became an elected official. So it's part of a mission that I have as a human, as an American citizen, as a citizen of the world, to make sure that we understand the world around us. Otherwise, you're not going to get things done.
You write in the liner notes, for the past year or so, we've been observing the heroic actions of the Ukrainian people who have persevered.
Yeah.
While eluding Putin's bombs, they are fighting for themselves and for us. You have 3 songs about that. Well, we're reading today that quickly time is running out. America might not be giving any more aid to Ukraine. The MAGA Republicans who have taken control of Congress are stopping any kind of consideration for renewed Ukraine funding. Is it over? I mean, did Putin win?
He could. Look at Israel.
What's
I mean,
that gonna
it's
mean?
not just Ukraine.
What's that mean if Putin wins?
What it means if Putin wins is a country that's on the verge of a democratic resurgence, Ukraine, on the border of our NATO allies, will be an oppressed country for the near term. And it's abysmal because you have this heroic leader and a heroic people. I mean, the leader can only do so much. The way these people are fighting, and some of the songs that I have on the album were really inspired by New York Times reportage on individual women trying to protect their family, men trying to defend their country. I do have a song about Putin, and I cast him as tantamount to a rapist or somebody who would just really be an insidious person who wants to abuse another person
And a country.
So
Let's listen to your song, At Night I Dream of Odessa.
All right, where my grandfather was born.
Your grandfather was born in Odessa.
Yes, he was. You'll hear about
When
it.
did he come over?
He came over the beginning of the 20th century. He came in a very interesting way.
Because my grandfather came from similar region, not Ukraine, but part of Poland, sometimes Russia, at Semyonich at around 1905, I think it was, or 1895. We weren't sure which.
1905 is around the time my grandfather came, but he came in a different way. He was a leafleter for the communists in the early part of the 20th century, was sent to Siberia, and he came to this country out of Vladivostok. The Jacob Riis Foundation funded a lot of what I call the earlier generation refuseniks to come into the country through the Panama Canal, and he came in through Galveston, Texas.
Wow.
And somehow got from Galveston
And did he start the butcher shop in Waterbury?
No,
Was
we
that
weren't
your
butchers.
dad?
My grandfather was a produce peddler, a fruit
Okay.
and vegetable peddler
In Waterbury?
in Waterbury, and he somehow got from Galveston to Waterbury, Connecticut.
Now, how about your dad?
My father was born in Waterbury.
And did he do produce business?
My father was a peddler when I was a little boy. I mean, in fact, people ask me, how'd you get into politics? Your father was a fruit peddler. I said, think about what a peddler does. Peddler goes neighborhood by neighborhood, meets with different ethnic groups, figures out who's going to eat the collard greens, who want the radishes, who's going to eat the lettuce by ethnicity and by neighborhood. And so I got to see all the ethnic neighborhoods of Waterbury as a kid growing up. So I like to think that might have encouraged me to be a person who would knock on doors asking for votes.
And meanwhile, you're following your grandfather's tradition. He had leaflets. You're putting out songs with
I
a
am putting
political
out songs.
message.
These are my leaflets.
At Night I Dream of Odessa here on WNHS 103.5 M, Dateline New Haven. Steve Mednick's new album, On the Brink. Track 4, At Night I Dream of Odessa.
At night I dream of Odessa, a place I've never been to, in the distance of time and space. The Russians, they are coming to bomb us to non-existence. A siege, relentless and craving. I was dreaming of Mariupol, where the children found a shelter in the basement of a theater. I walked the alleys of the city garden toward the Sea of Azov. Will I ever see the Guardian again? Will I ever see the Guardian again? We have no right to react in silence, no reason to refrain from action, to let the tyrant have free license. There's not a time for contradiction. We're looking in the shadows, trying to shell us to oblivion. The tyrant from the north will never know what's about to hit him. I was dreaming of my city, the sights and scents of winter, not the lost things left behind. I'm hiding in a cold room, no windows, glimpse of light. My children cry, Mama, we don't want to die. My children cry, Mama, we don't want to die. We have no right to react in silence, no reason to refrain from action, to let the tyrant have free license. There's not a time for contradiction. We're looking in the shadows, trying to shell us to oblivion. The tyrant from the north will never know what's about to hit him. It's cold everywhere, there's no heat, no running water, seeking shelter from the iron rain. I want my life, my future, an end to the disorder. Just wanna smile again. I just wanna smile again. At night I dream of Odessa, the home of my grandfather. He woke up to the sea. He woke up to the sea. Will I ever wake up to his sea?
Steve Mednick, Dreaming of Odessa, on his new CD, On the Brink, Problems in Democracy, Part 6, here on WNHH FM, New Haven's home for community radio. Are there any similarities between writing and recording music and writing and putting up for vote charters?
Well, Marty Looney, many years ago, our
Senator.
state senate president and longtime New Haven elected official, once said to me, what's the difference between your writing op-eds when you were a politician and writing music as a musician? And I said to him, I think you can be more honest as a musician. You can be more truthful as a musician. I'm not saying that politicians don't tell the truth most of the time, but politicians need to be conscious of what constituencies might say, competing constituencies that they care about, etc. I, as a musician who's not planning on running for office anytime soon, which probably means never, don't have to worry about that. Charters need to be consensus documents. They need to be, in order to get 88%, as we did in Norwalk, to get 60+% as we did in New Haven, and to come as close as we did in Stamford, where we lost, I think, 11,000 and 9,000. When you think about the money gap between the people who opposed it and the people who supported it, you have to really try to reach the public and reach a consensus. I'd like to think that in Stamford they did reach a consensus, but they were outspent, which I think caused a big problem.
What
that's
time
a
of
big
day
difference.
do you write your charter language? What time of day do you write your songs?
Well, charter is work, so I'm taking time away right now from my desk in the middle of the day. That's when I would be writing a charter. I was working on
you
ordinances.
write music at night?
I write music at night. I write music in the morning. I write music when I take a walk. I don't want my
songs hit
clients to
you
think
when-
I don't think about them when I'm walking, but I do think about a medley. And
So what are
and
some
rhythm.
lessons from what happened at the polls this year about charters, and where do we go next with charters in Connecticut? What are the big issues?
I think that most of the news was, at least in my charters, was good. You had two communities, New Haven and Norwalk, that were committed to creating more readable, understandable, comprehensible charters. And I think the better your charter works for the public, the more likely you're to get engagement by the public. And I'd like to think that that would be one of the benefits of having a well-written charter. And a good structure of government. So that's the lesson there. Stanford, I think the lesson is, I don't know what you do about campaign finance. Citizens United and the Supreme Court that gave it to us are the great scourge of our modern era in this country. And I think the Stanford outcome is a result of a Citizens United advantage that certain PACs have. You had people giving $15,000 contributions to the effort to kill the charter. And
Are you working on any charters for next year?
not right now. Not right now. There's a few that I think may come up. I don't want to talk about
So
them.
now, how many, these 4-year terms we have for alders,
Yeah.
is that the norm now? Waterbury, Bridgeport, Hartford, Stamford, Norwalk, they all have 4-year terms for their council?
Some do, some don't. Norwalk has 2 year for the mayor and 2 years for the mayor for the council. Stamford has 4 and 4. Bridgeport has 4 and 4. Hartford has 4 and 4.
Waterbury?
Hamden has 4 and 2. Waterbury has 4 and 2. The alders do run in the alternate side.
And other ones of 4, do they stagger them so that people have a chance every 2 years, like with Congress, to weigh in, or they just do it all at once?
I have recommended that in other communities, but it seems that in the communities like Hartford, for example, everybody has a 4-year term on the same cycle.
And you do expect to be doing more charters this coming year?
I hope. There are some cycles that are moving in that direction, and then there's one of my large cities, and that's one I want to talk about, that's come to me about a couple of tweaks. Remember, you don't have to do it every 10 years. You can do a charter revision every.
Which one is that?
I don't want to talk about it, but I can tell you this: Norwalk.
You're not writing a song, so you don't have to be fully honest.
Yeah, Norwalk. Well, when I write the song about it, I'll let you know.
Have you ever written a song about a charter?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
What was it called?
Well, I wrote one that's too raw to talk about right now.
A song about a charter is too raw? I mean, we're
Well,
not
it's more
talking
about
like loss
people
of
involved
life.
in the charter. There's a song I wrote called "The Wanted Man," and the Wanted Man is about somebody who is described as a man with 3 names, and people in the city that I'm talking about would know who I'm talking about. It's not New Haven, who was kind of an interesting character during the charter revision process of 11 years ago in that particular community, Bridgeport. But other than that, I will not name names. That charter failed. And so I wrote a song because not so much about the charter per se, but it was really about the persnickety approach that several people took during that process. And so I was able to create characters that gave
And
me
you
an ability to
you
avoid.
wrote a song about
an
New
ulcer.
Haven when there was an effort to stop the Palace Theater from becoming the Carl Street Music Hall, and that you found an old document that thwarted a certain individual who was trying to use the power of a certain university to stop it. You found an alley that was in the records that would allow
Salvation
for fire.
Alley.
That's a really good song. I wish
Thank
I had
you.
brought in the CD.
Yeah,
but,
no, Salvation Alley was all about. It was pretty.
So parting words on charters? What are the
Parting
big
words on
issues coming
charters,
up?
I think that people, here's what I want to say. People need to pay attention. Newspapers are trying the best they can. The New Haven Independent does a great job
Thank you.
at covering some of our local politics, but a lot of our newspapers are out of the local politics business. And so I think it's important to get on websites and see what boards and commissions are doing. And I think
And how
that
can they buy your music?
you can buy my music on Amazon, almost any electronic media. Call me. I can sell you my albums. I got hard albums, CDs, but who has CD players anymore, right? So
Well, we do, because we heard 2 today. On
I
the
know we
CD.
did. Yeah.
Well, Steve Mednick, thanks so much for making time. for
My
us. You're-
pleasure,
You're
Paul.
such a busy guy. You're thriving as a attorney and expert in municipal law, go-to guy in the state for charters, and album after album. And unlike Taylor Swift, you don't have to re-release your back catalog. You could just have new music.
And I don't
cranking
have
out.
to do any costume changes in my performance either.
Yeah, I did notice that.
Yeah.
You had one costume here the whole time.
Whole time.
All right, nice job.
Thank you, brother.
And thanks to Harry Droves for working the board. Thanks to Patricia for the comments. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It'd Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night. WNHH New Haven's home for community radio.